Well, how you doing? I promised you a bit of a chat about mobility and developing mobility flexibility. And what we have, really, what is a grand and complex and complicated subject can be simplified down, as most things are, as Ed Parker would like to say, simplified sophistication. That's what we're aiming for. As I prefer the art of applied laziness, which means if we can bore down to the key points, the principles that underpin the methods, well then that's the lazy way of doing things. We can be smarter, therefore we can be more efficient, somewhat lazy, the art of applied laziness. Now, because I'm lazy in that way, I've actually listed the 5 methods here. Just so I don't forget. But there are really five ways that we can trick our body into allowing a greater range of motion, developing control through that range of motion. Whether we call it flexibility or mobility, even the term stability, these terms are, I think, ill-defined and they fluctuate in meaning according to who's saying it. In my mind, Dave's mind, flexibility is the total available range of motion. Mobility is how much of that range of motion do you have control in, i.e. you have strength in that range of motion. Stability is not the opposite of mobility. Stability is very much the same thing as mobility in that you are able to make control and fine adjustments within a range of motion. If I trip and fall and I land and get my feet under me, boom. Yeah, if there's a moment where everything just locks in and stabilizes me and probably puts the brakes on, we can think of that as stability. Mobility then is probably the ability to get the leg through and under me before it hits the ground. So I'm just clicking away on the computer here. It's been playing silly buggers. But yeah, stability and mobility are very much the same thing, but maybe looked at from a slightly different lens. I think it's 2 sides of the same coin. So how do we increase our flexibility, mobility, stability? Simple. What we probably need to give a nod to beforehand is the fact that we don't really know for certain how we're increasing mobility. It used to be thought we're increasing the length of, maybe increasing the length of the muscle fibers themselves. Doubtful. What the current my favorite viewpoint is, what we're actually doing is we're showing the nervous system that it's safe to take this joint through this range of motion to lengthen the tissues, the muscles, the fascia, connective tissue, are safe going to this particular length. And when I say safe, it means they're not going to tear, they're not going to get damaged. It's safe. Right, here we go. I now have the actual newsletter up in front of me that I was usually read for a bit from the newsletter. I was going to wing this because the computer's playing silly buggery, but here we go. But so we think this is all theory. Muscles are almost slave units. It's like the lights above me. They're either on or off. The light switch determines whether they're on or off because I flick the switch. If it's a dimmer switch, I could control how much they are on and how much they are off. And I like to think of that as a nice metaphor, story for muscle recruitment. If a muscle is constantly tight, the body has seen a reason, the brain, the nervous system has seen a reason to make that muscle tight. Likewise, if a muscle is overly long, overly floppy, in the case of hypermobility, we see this, the body has seen a reason for this. And all we need to do is change his mind a little bit. And that's how you develop flexibility, mobility, stability. Change his mind a little bit. I was even reading something from a strength coach there recently. And I've read this before, but it was lovely because it's so opposite to what we're talking about today. You know, there's a powerlifting coach. And they were talking about to be able to lift bigger and bigger weights, we basically just need to take the limits off, shut down the protective mechanisms in the nervous system to allow us to lift those bigger and bigger weights. It's not just about getting stronger. So anyway, what are 5 methods? Method 1, static stretching. This comes and goes like old fashions, in and out, in and out. Static stretching, and there's a lovely term that I got from reading Pavel Tsatsoulian's book, Relaxing to Stretch. He says, wait out the tension. And I like that. For static stretching, that's exactly what you do. If we get into a position, whatever stretch you're trying to do, whatever range of motion you're trying to develop, and we'll come to the specifics on that in a little while. But say, for example, I'm opening up my forearm muscles, and I get to here, and I go, oh, that's the end of it. Okay, well now I'll maybe come back a little bit till I feel that tension come on, till I feel discomfort but not pain, and I'll stay there until the brain cops on and goes, actually, that's all right. We can relax a little bit, and you'll feel go, oh, I can go a bit further now. Yeah, that's it. That's waiting out tension. That is static stretching. There's no magic pill. You could be sat there for 2 or 3 minutes, could be 30 seconds, could be a minute, it could be 20 minutes. And I have done 20-minute static stretches in the past. You need to get yourself in a comfortable position to be able to maintain this. It's not painful, it's uncomfortable. If it's painful, you're going too far. Remember, we're trying to show the nervous system safety. If it's painful, a pain signal is the opposite of safety. That is a danger signal. So it's going to tighten up, trying to pull you out of that position. Alrighty. Now, static stretching, the problem with it is it is pure range of motion only. No strength, no control. In that, I'm not a big fan. Now, if you're a dancer, if you're a martial artist and you need high levels of flexibility, if you are coming back off an injury and you need to regain lost range of motion, then yes, static stretching can be useful. I think too much emphasis is placed on it, especially in the martial arts and dance community, where it's on a lot of the yoga people. You stretch, never develop strength, and we end up with what we call floppy people. The worst of the floppy people I personally have come across belong to the Taekwondo community. That's a broad stroke, they're not all bad, but I've seen a lot of floppy Taekwondo folks, and man, the splits they can do and the spinny, jumpy, flashy, kick over your head stuff, amazing. Like, genuinely amazing. But strength, control, not there. The risk of injury to their hips and their knees is higher, and that's usually what I see. Why I see them. Their hips, their backs, their knees are all shot. The usual way that the rehab process goes is, well, we're going to start with a strength program, and that's all a lot of them need. So that's method one. Method number two, dynamic range of motion, DROM, D-R-O-M. This is probably my go-to, my number one, my favorite. What if you followed my work, you'll have seen on go to the 100 rep warm-ups and joint mobility stuff, and that's all dynamic range of motion. Come into the clinic and do a bit of anatomy and motion with me, and it's a form of, it's just a very, very detailed and specific dynamic range of motion type of work that we use for most of the rehab practices. It really does work. And what it is going into a stretch, coming back out of it. Now, you don't have to come all the way back out of it. It can be a case of you go into it and then just back a bit, and then in and back, and in and back, and in and back. And it's not really pulsing. You're moving in and out of that last few percent of a stretch. When you feel it come on, you push into it, you come back until the start. Yeah. So what I like to think of dynamic range of motion is blue tack. You know, that you stick your posters up on your wall with. And if you get an old bit of blue tack and you just pull it, it'll snap, won't it? But if you get that bit of blue tack and you massage it, you gently move it and stretch it, move it, and just ask it to go a little bit further, a little bit further, a little bit further, before you know it, you can pull that blue tack out to quite a length. Chewing gum, same thing. Yeah. The difference with blue tack and chewing gum is it's not fully elastic, it doesn't just spring back. We want our muscles to be elastic and to spring back. But that idea of warming up the blue tack, warming up the chewing gum so it becomes stretchy, that is dynamic range of motion. So moving into the position, coming back out just a bit, and then back in, back out, back in, back out. And if this is your end range, you move into it, you come back out, you move into it, you come back out. Pretty soon you move in and it moves. You come back out, you move in and it moves and it comes back out. And this is how we gently increase that range of motion. But because it's done through movement, you move in and you have the control and strength to come back out again. That shows the body it's safe. The muscle fibers wake up and they grant you that nice range of motion. Strength gently starts to develop. Were there any specific notes? No, not really. Dynamic range of motion. It's really simple. Pretty much any stretch can be done in a dynamic range of motion. Contrast stretching. You like contrast. Contrast is great. What contrast does is, if I am, for example, I know this isn't a particularly good bicep stretch, but if I'm stretching the bicep, I'm doing that by opening the elbow joint. Opposite to the bicep is the tricep. If I contract the tricep, that's going to do two things. It's going to pull the joint more open, and there's this thing called reciprocal inhibition, whereby the muscles on one side of the joint fire, the muscles on the other side of the joint will relax somewhat. So, as I pull the tricep, it will allow more length go into the bicep. I like this a lot, particularly with hip flexor stretches, where we're trying to open the hip flexor, so we contract the glute, the functional opposite. A quad stretch, you're bending the knee, pulling the foot up to the backside. As you do so, you pull it up using the hamstring. Chest stretches. We get into a chest stretch position that we fire the back muscles to try and pull the arm back further. So many ways of doing contrast stretching. It works really, really well. And it works. You're sort of doing dynamic range of motion, but the focus is on the tension in the opposite muscles. So you move in, you move out, you move in, you move out. But you're doing it with a contraction on the opposite muscles. And if you need somebody there to give you a tap, to pat, to help you get some feedback into that muscle, all the better. What you're doing now is you're actually building strength. This is great for athletes looking to gain positions and like open chain positions. So a kicker looking to gain strength to hold their leg up, to get their leg up high. Great. So to open the adductors, we'll fire the abductors, the glutes, glute medius. So what you do there is you prop your leg up on something that is going to give you a gentle stretch, and then with strength, you lift your leg off and let it come down again. Lift your leg off, coming down again. This has become very popular as end range strength. There are a few 3-letter certifications you can get just on that. It's not rocket science, guys. The muscle that's doing the lifting, the closing side of the joint, tighten that and it will help release the opening side of the joint, whatever joint. Works really well. Works really well if you do a set of contrast lifts. So, for example, I'll just use this forearm stretch again. So I might use my forearm to pull, and after a number of reps, I will just go into a passive stretch at the end, just to reinforce to the brain, this is safe, we're good. Now, that brings us to ballistic stretching. This has been a very controversial subject for a long, long time. I remember my karate instructor back when we were young teenagers telling us that new information was coming out on ballistic stretching is dangerous. So he stopped us doing it for a while. A few years later, we were back doing it. Then it was gone again, then it's back again, gone again, back again. You know what, ballistic stretching? It's been used in martial arts, it's been used in gymnastics and acrobatics forever. It works, but it's not without its risks. Ballistic stretching is to dynamically whang your limb. So there's a ballistic chest stretch. Okay, there's a static chest stretch. There's a contrast. Here is dynamic range of motion, and this is ballistic. Okay, so you see how the speed, there's an element of, well, we'll say violence involved. This means it needs to be ramped up carefully. You'd be warmed up. So, probably the best ballistic stretching I ever came across was while I was away and I was training with a Chinese lad, and he was teaching Tai Chi. Although when it was just me and him, we did Tai Chi into basically just beating the shit out of each other, and it was great fun. His method, straight leg swings, and they were straight, no bend in the knee. Straight leg swings. But we do 3 sets, all the way up the ring. You take a step and you swing your leg up, and you, boom, axe kick it down. You pull it down using the contrast muscles. The first set would be done to about belly button height. Second set you do to about chest height. And the third set you do to your maximum. You'd be looking at bang your thigh off your chest. And we do that with several variations of ballistic stretches. But everyone was stepped. So a nice general warm-up. Jogging around, joint mobility, jumping about, a few push-ups, a few squats, get the body warm. Then into low-level ballistic. take the same ballistic stretch to a medium level and take the same ballistic stretch into a maximal level over 3 sets with rest in between. Ramping up, same as you would do in strength training. And that's probably the point most people miss with flexibility and mobility work. It is analogous to strength training. All the principles we use, sets and reps and rest periods and all that we talk about in strength work, still apply in mobility work. Why wouldn't they? It's the same tissues. So yeah, ballistic stretching. It works. It's not one I'd recommend everybody does. I think it's good to do. I don't think it's good for everybody, but it's certainly useful. You just have to decide whether you need it. Because the way this lad, this Kung Fu lad taught me, putting the brakes on with the contrasting muscles. Actually, no, it's not the contrasting muscles, sorry. Excuse me. Excuse me. We're putting the brakes on as we're hitting end range, and then we're accelerating the leg back down. So if it's a chest stretch, you'd hit end range and you'd actually power it back in. There's a powerful contraction in that end zone. When you hit your end range, you're contracting powerfully to bring it back. So again, there's a slight strength power element, which I like. And now we come to proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation, PNF. If you've ever been to the physio, you've probably been PNF'd. PNF it's like a parlor trick. It's like a magician's trick. PNF is, if I'm trying to stretch, just for the ease of the camera, if I'm trying to stretch my forearm muscles here, well, what I'll do then is I'll contract them as hard as I can. So I'm trying to bend my hand back against the stretch. I'll contract them. Then we relax and we push into the stretch. What happens when a muscle contracts? It immediately relaxes. Yeah? So we take that relaxation and we use that to give us our stretch. Works a treat. So, you stretch, contract, you relax, you go a bit further, you hold it. Wait for tension to go. Wait out the tension. Contract again, and then relax. Wait out tension. You'll do that maybe 3 or 4 times before you take a breather. It can be incredibly strenuous. It's an isometric workout. Yeah? You not only have you put your muscle into end range, but now you're doing isometrics in that end range against a resistance that you can't overpower. So usually it's a partner we do this with. It can be difficult to do it on your own. It can be done on your own. A partner works best unless you are extremely well disciplined. How long does the isometric need to be held? It doesn't need to be held that long. It could be 10 seconds. It could be a bit longer. You pull, relax, get taken into the stretch. Pull, and they'll be shaking and grimacing and grunting. You relax, get taken into the next bit of range. Each time you get taken into the next bit of range, just stay there for a little while until it starts to settle and you can contract again. We're talking about creating safety and telling the nervous system that we're safe. If we're doing isometrics, we're showing the body that we have strength. We're developing strength. We're pulling. And the body goes, oh, okay, if I can pull here, well, then I'm probably all right. Let's allow it. And that's the crux. That's what all these methods are looking to do. To get the nervous system to allow you range of motion. Now, that's it. That's your 5 methods. What does stretches look like? There's a million of them. There's a pec stretch. Pec fibers run in a fan shape onto my arm here. So I externally rotate and I put my thumb behind me. Simple as that. Could be up here, could be down here to get different muscle fibers. And there lies the real answer. There's no one position. You move into a position until where you feel the tightness that you want to stretch. You look for the tight line that you want to stretch. It's not one spot. Your position might look a little different to my position, which will look a little different to the next guy's position. That's okay. There are very generic and general rules. I recommend you follow those rules and then explore within them. You know, your muscle fibers, you've got an origin, you've got an insertion, a start and a finish to the muscle. So, you know, my forearm muscles go from here across my wrist here, so I know that's going to give me a stretch, but I know if I twist my wrist one way or the other, it's going to change the stretch. Likewise, you know, this kind of thing. Would that be better? Would that be better? Would that be better? Would that be better? You don't know until you're in the position and you look around and you find where is your tight line. Yeah. Once that's released and relaxed and you've done whatever you want to do with it, you can look around for the next tight line. Yeah. And then the next. Simple as that. You don't want the pull, the feeling of the stretch to be in an acute spot. You want it to be across the whole muscle. If you find it in an acute spot, we tend to think of that as you're getting into tendon, ligament, and we don't really want to be stretching them too much. We want it to be in the body of the muscle. So look around until you find a position where there's a line. Genuinely, it's a line through the muscle. Once you get that, work with it. Pick one of the 5 methods. Yeah, dynamic range of motion, probably my go-to. Do contrast if it's possible. Maybe try a bit of PNF. Yeah. Static stretching, I think, works best at home, separate to training. Static stretching is what I call TV stretching. You simply prop yourself in front of the TV somewhere and you hold for an advert break for a period of time. The rest of them, dynamic range of motion, works beautifully in your warm-ups. So does contrast. Even PNF can be done in a warm-up. And it works beautifully in your cool downs, as we discussed in the last, was it the last episode? The one before, can't remember, where we talked about what to do in your cool downs. Dynamic range of motion can be done quite vigorously at the start of your cool down, and then slowly bring it down, until it is pretty much static stretching at the end. Simple as that. Really, none of this stuff is complicated or needs to be complicated. If you want to understand the physiology and the details, yeah, that's complex. Application of it is quite simple. Keep it simple, just not easy. And I'll talk to you soon.